Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday, first of the new year. Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you guys had a blessed holiday season with your families and wish you nothing but the best here in the great new year. And leading off the show, which is only right because the greatest leadoff hitter in the history of Major League Baseball passed away since I last recorded. Rickey Henderson. Rickey loved Rickey, and so did all of us. It was definitely out of nowhere. There definitely have been inklings about certain Hall of Famers that are not doing well health-wise, and Rickey Henderson, it happened how he played. It happened very quickly. The news, at first wasn't confirmed by anyone, and then Hall of Fame teammate Dave Winfield posted about it on his Instagram, and that made me feel like this might be real. This is very scary, but I was still holding out hope that it was, a farce, that it was bad information that Dave had gotten. And unfortunately, later on in the day, it was confirmed that Rickey Henderson passed away at the age of 65 years old. And everybody's been sharing so many amazing Rickey Henderson interview sound bites and stories about Rickey Henderson, about how he hung his first check for $1 million on the wall because that's what he thought a millionaire meant, is that he possessed $1 million in his hand. So many great stories about Rickey Henderson, who might be the most impactful player in the history of the game in terms of his on-the-field impact. It's a very fun argument to have. He's clearly not considered by many the greatest player of all time, but his impact was truly unreal. And this is a guy who, is known for his speed. He's the all-time stolen base leader with over 1,400 stolen bases, 468 stolen bases ahead of second place Lou Brock. So he passed him by a career's worth. If you steal 468 bases in your career, I'm considering you as a guy who did enough speed-wise to have that as a notch in your cap for the Hall of Fame. And that's the difference between first and second place on the stolen base list. Over 2,000 runs scored. He's one of 8 players in the history of baseball with over 2,000 runs scored. The other ones, Alex Rodriguez, Willie Mays, Pete Rose, Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Barry Bonds, and Ty Cobb. And Rickey Henderson is the all-time leader. He has more runs scored than anyone that's ever played the game. Part of the reason was because, he would get on base and he'd steal all those bases, putting him in scoring position. And with his elite track speed, he was able to score, from second on a bloop single every single time. But a lot of times he'd steal second and then he'd steal third as well. In the same thing, he was a menace on the base paths. So you'd think that Rickey Henderson wasn't someone that you'd want to walk. He wouldn't be someone that you want to give a free pass over to first base. But in fact, he's second all time in walks behind Barry Bonds. He's one of 4 players with over 2,000 walks in their career. The other ones being Ted Williams, Babe Ruth, and Barry Bonds. If you made a list, a Mount Rushmore of the most feared hitters in baseball history, those 3 guys would occupy 3 of your 4 spots. And it makes sense that they were walked a lot. They all had great eyes for the strike zone, but also pitchers had to be careful with them throwing pitches in the strike zone because they could go a very, very long way. Extra base hitting machines. Rickey Henderson, on the other hand, the only right-handed hitter of the bunch, was someone that you really didn't want to walk. He was a guy that you knew if you gave him first base, he was gunning for second. And if he got to second base, there was a chance he'd take third. And like I said, very little contact from second base would get Rickey Henderson to score a run. But he still had such a great eye for the strike zone, and he made pitchers pay as well with his bat. He was a guy who could actually hit on top of being the speed threat, a lot of the guys that are on the all-time stolen base list weren't the best of hitters. But Ricky Henderson, 111 career Baseball Reference WAR, absolutely unbelievable. 3,055 career hits and 297 home runs. 300 to me is legitimate power. He's just under that threshold. And he was able to, make you pay. He'd be able to hit it over the fence, hit it into the gaps. And whether you walked him or you got a hit, his on base percentage was absolutely unreal. This is a guy who, for his career, despite playing parts of 25 seasons, got on base over 40% of the time. Walks, hits, he got on base. And it's very, very fitting that he's most known as an Oakland Athletic with Moneyball, and the whole theme of it being, we don't care, he gets on base. I don't care if it's a walk or a hit. Ricky Henderson could do both, and once he got on there, he was a danger on the base pads. The one tool that Ricky Henderson, wasn't elite at was his defense, but he had the speed to get to most balls. And he was able to throw out some runners throughout his career as well. But this is truly one of the inner sanctum Hall of Famers, one of the guys that will be remembered forever in the history of the game, and truly someone that I wish I was able to watch live. I've seen so many highlights of Ricky Henderson, over 500 doubles in his career, over 60 triples in his career, drove in over 1,100 runs. He was, a guy who did enough offensively to keep you honest, but had a great eye for the strike zone. And once he got on the base paths, it was a racetrack for Ricky. I was truly, truly upset when I saw it. I know the baseball world was very upset. We've lost two great 24s this year, earlier in the year, losing Willie Mays, and then Ricky Henderson right before 2024 was over, ironically enough. And, it's just a real tragedy to see someone like him pass away at 65, a guy who clearly, cared so much about the game, cared so much about the communities he served, and was very involved still in the Oakland community and world. And as the Oakland Athletics come to an end, so unfortunately does the life of Ricky Henderson. May he rest in peace. But we don't want this whole show to be a bummer. I wanted to give Ricky Henderson his flowers. He's one of the greatest players that ever lived, and a player that deserves to be celebrated, that deserves to be talked about. And for, younger baseball fans like myself that didn't get to watch Ricky Henderson play, reading those stats and talking about the class that he's in those records, it really, really makes you appreciate and, give a second look to that Baseball Reference page, give a second look to his highlights on YouTube. And, Ricky Henderson, the person, was really, really electric as well, as his on the field persona was. Corbin Burnes, I was talking about in the last episode that this is a waiting game, and I was hoping, with the extra week off that, some of these moves would happen. No movement on the third base front yet, but Corbin Burnes is an Arizona Diamondback, 6 years, $210 million, with an opt-out after the second year. So 2 years guaranteed of Corbin Burnes in the desert. And, sometimes these decisions don't end up being a baseball fit, because I truly thought he was going to be a New York Met. I thought they were going to go after Juan Soto, the best hitter on the market, and to some people, Corbin Burnes was the best pitcher on the market. I thought they were going to sign both of those guys, spend $750 million, $750 million on the two. Obviously, Juan Soto ended up getting a little bit more than that. But Corbin Burnes does not end up signing with the Mets. He does not end up signing with the Dodgers or the Yankees. He ends up going to the Arizona Diamondbacks. And this decision wasn't simply about baseball. Well, the Diamondbacks are a very good team. He joins the rotation now with Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Eduardo Rodriguez, and Jordan Montgomery are still a part of the fold. And 2023 playoff kind of sensation, Brandon Pfaadt is still in the mix for rotation innings over there. So it is truly impactful signing for the desert. The Diamondbacks now have given out 2 big money deals to starting pitchers. First Zach Greinke back in the day, and now Corbin Burnes. And Corbin Burnes made this decision for two reasons. One was money. He was offered more from the Mets and Toronto, but the taxes in New York and Canada were a lot more. The Giants as well, I believe, offered on Corbin Burnes. So those three teams were all in, but the taxes to go into California or New York or to Canada were significantly more than in Arizona, where it is a thriving economic market over there in the desert. And secondly, that's where his off-season home is. So being based, in Arizona, not having to go home shopping and spend more money from what he gets in this contract. He sets up his family. He doesn't have to move his family around. And for the next at least couple years, he's going to pitch at home, which is, very important to these players, and it doesn't get talked about enough. I know it's a business, and we all want to, make the best fantasy baseball teams that we possibly can with these landing spots. But a lot of times it comes down to the people and where they want to be and where they're comfortable. Jose Ramirez signed a very team-friendly deal to stay in Cleveland a few years ago because he just didn't want to, move out of his lifestyle. And that doesn't get talked about enough in the baseball world. Corbin Burnes, I'm happy for you. Big payday. The more we see Max Fried sign with the Yankees and Corbin Burnes sign with the Arizona Diamondbacks, both over $200 million, the better the Blake Snell deal with the Dodgers looks like for getting in early on him. Not only is it less in present day money, but there's also more deferrals than both of those contracts combined. The Dodgers continue to get away with this. How do they keep getting away with this? The Dodgers. And Corbin Burnes is going to be matching up, trying to, like I said, instead of joining them, trying to beat them. And he's going right into their division. He wants to compete. And, he's not running away from the big monster. He's going to fight it with a sword in hand. And I have a lot of respect for Corbin Burnes for doing so. And this Diamondbacks team, a team that I thought was cutting payroll, they weren't willing to give Christian Walker $60 million. He's well worth that. They end up, trading for Josh Naylor from the Cleveland Guardians to replace the impact of Christian Walker, but also add, some left-handed power, which is really, really awesome for that Diamondbacks lineup after losing Jock Peterson as well. And they end up signing, to some people, the best pitcher on the starting market. And I love the opt-out after the second year because Corbin Burnes, under the hood stats, have been declining a little bit over the last couple years. And if, for whatever reason, his performance starts going down and the Diamondbacks can get out of the deal, then it's good for both sides. But if Corbin Burnes, bounces back to his Cy Young form and wants to re-hit the open market in 2 years, it's beneficial to him as well. So much, much respect for Corbin Burnes and the Diamondbacks for spending that money. I did not see this coming. I don't think many people did see this landing spot coming, but like I said, sometimes it doesn't come down to, best fit or, fantasy baseball. It comes down to the player and where they want to be and what number they want to be at, what number they're comfortable with accepting for them and their families. But I talked about the Diamondbacks moves. There's been other moves as well over the last couple weeks since we've recorded. And, it's just so fun this MLB offseason to see the kinds of trades, the kind of signings that are going on. Gleyber Torres signed a 1-year deal with the Detroit Tigers to be their everyday second baseman this year. I really like the low-risk signing of Gleyber Torres. I know to many Yankees fans, he's a disappointment, but trading a year and a half of Aroldis Chapman, who they ended up signing back anyway afterwards, for a guy who, made an all-star team, had a lot of power for a second baseman, was able to fill in at shortstop at times for their team. He was a very good player. He's not, a superstar. He's not someone that changes life, but he's a good hitter that, pencils into this young Tigers lineup as a guy with some experience, as a guy that can hit. And I think he has a really good chance here to rebound and make his stock go way up because he was disappointing in the Yankee uniform. But if he helps the Tigers, take that next step this year and has a big year in their lineup, I think it'll pay dividends for Gleyber Torres and his career. Nice 1-year low risk deal there for the Tigers, who are also in on Alex Bregman. It's looking like they might be the favorites to sign the third baseman, with AJ Hinch's former manager calling the shots over in Detroit. But that was not the only move that happened. There were several trades that ended up happening during the last week and a half or so. And I think it's truly, truly special to shout out teams that are willing to shake things up, teams that are willing to go and get that guy. The Philadelphia Phillies go out there and trade for Jesus Luzardo from the division rival Miami Marlins. Jesus Luzardo, an off season ago, coming off a really good season. It was talked about, you're going to have to give up some legitimate prospect haul, kind of similar to what we just saw Garrett Crochet accumulate for the White Sox. And then Jesus Luzardo had a very injury-ridden, lower performance 2024 season. And I love this buy low for the Phillies. Yes, the prospect that they gave up is in the top 100. He has a lot of upside. I like, getting something quality for the Marlins, but adding Jesus Luzardo, a lefty with the upside that he brings to this rotation that has Wheeler and Nola, but also has, breakout stars from last year, Ranger Suarez and Christopher Sanchez. I really like this rotation. I think it's one of the deepest in baseball. They have Andrew Painter, a top prospect that's waiting in the wings for one of these guys to go down. And they are legitimately deep in this rotation. Taijuan Walker is still in the mix. I don't know where he's going to fall into play for the Phillies this year, but a guy who can eat some innings if need be, or also be a possible trade chip. But the Phillies, I really like this move. I think that they did a fantastic job, not selling the farm. They didn't have to give up a Painter or a higher end prospect for Luzardo. And, all the upside is now on the Philly side of things. He's controllable for the next couple of years. And it's basically a buy low of Garrett Crochet. And I talked about this, that it would be great if the Red Sox could trade for both Crochet and Luzardo. They were connected to Luzardo last offseason, but didn't end up pulling the trigger on the price because they couldn't agree with the Marlins, and they didn't want to trade their top prospects. They're willing to trade their top prospects now. Went out there and gave to Crochet, who, granted, has a shorter track record as a starter, but has nastier stuff, higher strikeout percentage stuff. So if Luzardo rebounds to his 2022-2023 form, it could be really exciting for this Phillies team that has World Series aspirations. But if he doesn't, I think it's still a really solid, buy low opportunity for them. And the Marlins end up still getting a pretty good prospect for him. The Yankees added another MVP to their lineup. We talked about the Cody Bellinger trade on last show, but now they have signed Paul Goldschmidt to a 1-year, $12.5 million deal. As a Red Sox fan, it breaks my heart. A guy who cheers for the Cardinals as well as my National League team, it breaks my heart to see Paul Goldschmidt go to the Evil Empire. And apparently, he was offered more than $12.5 million by multiple teams and turned it down because he wanted to play in New York. Paul Goldschmidt clearly is ring chasing. The Dodgers have their first baseman locked up in Freddie Freeman, and the DH slot's locked up with Shohei Ohtani. The Philadelphia Phillies, same deal. Bryce Harper's their first baseman. Kyle Schwarber's locked up as the DH, so there's no real role for him there. The Braves, Matt Olson is locked up there as well. Marcell Ozuna is coming off an amazing season as their DH. You look at these top contending teams, and, first base was not a need for many of them. So I picked him to go home to the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks ended up going in another direction, trading for Josh Naylor, who, at this point in your career, you'd rather have Josh Naylor than Paul Goldschmidt, but I think Paul Goldschmidt still has something in the tank to offer. And the Yankees, who let Anthony Rizzo walk now, signed Paul Goldschmidt, a guy who, might not be the hitter he was when he won the MVP back in 2022, but a guy that can play solid defense, a great guy in the clubhouse, and, will have some big moments with the bat. And now this Yankees lineup technically has 4 MVPs, kind of like what the Dodgers have. The difference is the Yankees, I love Stanton, I love Goldschmidt, I have respect for Bellinger. 3 of those 4 MVPs are not still playing at an MVP type level. When you go over to the Dodgers, MVPs and Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, and Freddie Freeman are all probably going to finish top 10 in NL MVP voting. given a healthy season in 2025 and beyond. So it's a little bit different there, but the name equity is big for the fan base. And like I said, having those guys in the locker room, I think helps the culture of a team that just came short and wants to go at it again. So I like the move for the Yankees. I don't love seeing Goldschmidt in pinstripes. That's going to be hard to watch at first, but I wish him nothing but the best over there in New York. A few other moves. Sean Manaea back with the Mets, where he really found himself as a front of the line starter last season. I thought he was going to get big money elsewhere, but the Mets were willing to pay up for him. And I think they saw Corbin Burns wasn't going to take their money, and they needed to keep a front of the line starter in house. So their rotation heading into 2025 as it sets right now, with Manaea at the top, Kodai Senga coming back from injury, as well. They signed Frankie Montas and Clay Holmes this offseason to be back end starters. They still have, David Peterson and Tyler McGill and guys like that in the, swing of things. But I think that they still are not done. I very much expect them to sign a guy like Pavetta or like Jack Flaherty or one of these, mid to high end rotation guys that are still out there to help with depth. Especially after that Phillies Luzardo move. I think they need that depth in the starting rotation to feel really good about contending in 2025 and beyond. So lots and lots of moves. There's still going to be many more to happen. Like I said, Alex Bregman still has not decided where he wants to go. Roki Sasaki has not made a decision yet on where he is going. Nolan Arenado is still out there on the trade market, and there's many, many more players and storylines to stay on top of, and I will try to do my best to cover as many of them as I can here every Solo Shot Saturday. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we'd like to throw back down the third base line to this day in baseball history. And January 4th didn't have a lot of winners. It's kind of a dead period in the history of baseball. There was some legal precedent set in 1994 when MLB had multiple bills sent to Congress to end the strike. So that was interesting to read up about, but not necessarily something that I want to talk about because, strikes and baseball, it's not a good mix. There were some Hall of Fame birthdays as well, some signings, some Hall of Fame elections. Wade Boggs and Ryan Sandberg were elected. Rogers Hornsby was elected on this day a while ago. But there was a low-risk 1-year deal signed on this day in 2010. Adrian Beltre, Hall of Fame third baseman, signed a 1-year, $9 million deal with the Boston Red Sox, with my Boston Red Sox. And I remember being so excited about this move. The Red Sox desperately needed a third baseman. I wanted Youkilis off of third base forever. And bringing in a guy who had the upside of an Adrian Beltre, who was dropping to one knee to hit balls over the Green Monster, made his first All-Star appearance as a Red Sox that season, and really set himself up for that big payday in Texas, which ended up being the catalyst for him finishing his career with over 3,000 hits and being a Hall of Famer. Was that kind of revamp to his stock and love for the game in his 30s. And that's why I talked about the Gleyber Torres move earlier. I'm not saying Gleyber Torres is going to have an all-star campaign with Detroit and then go on to have a Hall of Fame career, but these 1-year deals to guys that have done it before are the best deals to sign. They're the best. You don't have to worry about a 15-year commitment to someone or 10 years or 5 years or deferred money for the next 20, 30 years. A 1-year deal is the most fun. And I know there's a whole range of outcomes. There's some 1-year deals where the guy gets hurt right away and never even plays a game in the uniform. There's some 1-year deals where it's like Adrian Beltre and they have an all-star campaign and they're such a value and reset their own market for the next offseason. There's a whole range. And I just want people to know that it's not all about these mega deals. They get all the clicks. They get all the attention. I'm going to talk about Corbin Burns signing with the Diamondbacks. I was going to devote a ton of time to where Juan Soto was going to sign in his historic deal with the New York Mets. But the littlest moves that fly under the radar, and I've tried to highlight some of them throughout this offseason, don't forget about them because a few of them are going to hit. and they're going to hit big for these teams because they're low risk, high reward type of contracts. And that's the best kind of deal your team can sign, especially for ownership, because ownership doesn't want to be tied down to a bunch of sinking ships for half decade plus. They want flexibility where, hey, this worked out, let's do it again, or this didn't work out, let's go in a different direction. And that is what is so fantastic about this time of year, as teams, revamp themselves and try to make those final chess moves to get themselves ready for big league camp this spring. It's the little chess moves. There's still a few big fish on the board. Alex Bregman's got to decide where he's going. Roki Sasaki, Nolan Arenado in the trade market. But there are plenty of other pawns and bishops and rooks that are going to make huge, huge plays here in the 2025 Major League Baseball season. And I always try to remember to not ignore all of those moves. And I'm sure there's some that I've already ignored this offseason that'll end up, biting me in the butt this regular season as well. This time of year is big for resolutions. And I think it's really healthy for people to reflect on the year that they've had and where they want to be in the next year plus, and try to put goals and things in place to reach that. And when it comes to the podcast here, I have some big aspirations. I have some resolutions. The first one is being accountable. The last 2 seasons, I tried doing the TikTok thing, did not keep up with it, was not getting the engagement that I was hoping for, and got kind of frustrated with it and didn't end up picking up with it. Then last year, I wanted to tweet out every single solo home run, and that was something that I was keeping up with really well for a while, but when it started getting well into the hundreds and, seeing this final counter, it was over 2,700 solo shots this year. That's a lot of tweets, and that's a lot of having to keep up with Twitter and, keep track of all the home runs and, be constantly on your phone. And I wasn't able to do it. I got to a point where I fell so far behind that I just scrapped it. I need to find a better way to keep up with the solo shot home runs and, post it to help engage with the community. So I have some different things kicking around there to, find a more, foolproof, easily repeatable way to bring that to all of you. As well as with the show, I've had major changes, not just with the thumbnail, but with the set design from season 1 to season 2. And there is a lot cooking for season 3. Once we get into spring training and big league camp starts, that's when I'll unveil all of that, the new intro, the new background, and all those fun things. But let me know in the comments below what you've been liking about the show, where you'd like to see me change things or maybe improve. I'm definitely open to that as well. And personally, got a lot of resolutions this year as well, hitting certain savings goals, getting to certain points in my career as well as an aspiration, as well as, like doing things that are good for the health, both mentally, physically, and all those great things as well. And I hope all of you take some time during this first week of January to reflect a little bit on the year that was 2024. There was a lot of highs, I'm sure a lot of lows for many of you as well. And, just make a small bulleted list. It doesn't have to be, a really strict big plan that has, a big scroll to it. But take some time to talk about what your resolutions are, whether it be for, going to see games in person. I always talk about it. Try to get to a big league ballpark every summer, whether it be, going to the Baseball Hall of Fame for the first time, whether it be, hitting a certain fitness goal or, starting therapy or doing whatever you have to do in 2025 to make it, a better year. Things are going to knock you down in life, but you got to keep moving forward. You got to stay positive, and the mindset is really, really important. So get that mindset locked in early in the year and continue to strive towards it in the year to come. In the year to come, I appreciate all of you, Adam, Will, Jake, Hugo, everyone that was in the chat today. Thanks for spending part of your Solo Shot Saturday with me. For all of you that listen post-recorded throughout the week, I appreciate you as well. If you like the show, make sure that you like the video. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Leave me a review on podcast platforms. Do all those great things. It really helps me a lot as I continue to try to grow this podcast into a bigger entity over time, brick by brick. It's going to be a lot of fun to see just the changes from year 1 to year 2, but as the years go on as well. I've been Dom Manna, and I'll see you guys next Solo Shot Saturday.